All right, so here are 5 actionable email design principles for your brand from a 9-figure email marketer. Everything you need to know about email design in one video, and I have data to prove that it'll work. Now, in 20 minutes, we're gonna cover over 500 data points that have resulted into what we consider the best strategies for email design today. We've learned it from a plethora of tech partners, Klaviyo directly, and all the brands we work with. Now, you can instantly apply everything we talk about in this video today. And because I'm new to YouTube, I wanted to ensure you can sort of trust me here. So who am I? I'm Tarun Kamath. I live in Mississauga, Canada. I'm not a designer, and I do run one of the highest performing D2C email marketing agencies. In 2025 alone, our agency worked with over $1 billion in ARR and e-commerce revenue. We designed and sent out over 5,000 unique campaigns with over 100 that went viral. We're a top 0.1 Klaviyo agency, which means we're a top 0.1% Klaviyo agency. So we practice what we preach, and we won strategy awards, hackathons, but that's not the point. But the main idea is every principle that I cover in this video is how we took all our accounts and increased email revenue by 133% in profit per email sent. Here's me with the founder of Klaviyo and actually speaking at Klaviyo headquarters about what we do at Arcade Media. But back to you. My goal today is to take you from novice to expert in less than 30 minutes. And to really nail design, people often need like a 4-year UI UX degree, and you need to work at the top e-commerce brand pulling in over $10 million in revenue, right? So instead of dabbling into trying to search everywhere on the internet to figure out what good emails look like, this guide will actually break down how to craft emails that work using the 5 principles that we swear by at our agency. It's a tried and tested approach. Now, to actually become an expert, what I need you to do is actually follow along with the actionable tips. Feel free to pause and implement them as you read. Remember, this guide is not about how pretty your emails are, but it's how much revenue can you bring with effective design. So I want you to spend less and make more. If you're wondering if this video is for you, you just have to ask yourself if you get lost when figuring out things like layout and button placement, if you're worried about designing emails wrong and killing conversions in the process, and if your emails don't do justice to maybe your brand or your customers as well. Keep in mind that in this video, I'm not going to be covering things like segmentation, personalization, and story-based emails, text-based emails, and all the concepts outside of promotional email marketing. This document is purely based on design principles for e-commerce promotional emails. What's really important to remember is if no one sees your emails, there's no point in having good email design. So make sure that all the other bases are covered before you get to this video. Now, designing is the map, right? I want you to think about it as if designers are your GPS. The entire outcome of designing a good email means you have the right stops and you're adding the gas to get to the final destination. And so you are making sure that your copy, your segments are dialed in, and that is what's navigating customers to this point where you are just getting them to make the sale based off effective design. So pillar 1 is email layout. Visual hierarchy. This concept applies to every marketing channel, right? Especially email. How you go about using hierarchy will determine the success of your email. The average customer only views emails for about 9 seconds, and that was a statistic from 2024. And in those 9 seconds, your job is to let them know why they're reading, why they should continue, and make it as easy as possible. If you stick with me, I'll show you exactly how. Tip 1 for doing this is making it scannable. We use typography hierarchy, which means you leverage headers, subheaders, body text, and CTAs to separately create a hierarchy of what's important. And for emails, we typically want it to look like this. And the easier the email is to scan, the more likely it is to convert. As an example, just take a look at this and see which one sticks out more to you. Tip 2, primary offers first. Importance determines placement, right? So remember, even your emails have a prime real estate. I want you to think about this as what is most important. You want it to get to where most of the eyeballs will actually be. And to really capitalize on your promotional emails, your goal should be to prioritize primary offers and place them in areas where people would engage with most. And that means your offer should be the first header above the fold. There should be zero clutter where the primary offer is. And you want a visible, contrasting call to action. You want to make sure that your offer is actually actionable and customers are clicking through and actually exploring your offer. Now, you can get a little bit more complex with this if you do have lead magnets or if you have offers that potentially lead to customers going to the website and navigating to larger AOVs or different deals. You can do that too, but we want the most enticing offer to be the primary offer. Tip 3 is use single columns. One columns allows for ease of use. It makes sure your emails are both mobile friendly and desktop friendly. As you read the next action items, it'll make a little bit more sense as to why we do this, but it should definitely not be taken for granted. Use single columns. So the next tip is the magic triangle. Every email that we design that has a high conversion rate has been using this method since the dawn of time. And by that, I mean like 2020. Whether it's a major retailer or a small brand, this is the best way to get the user to click. It's making sure that their eyes are going from the headline all the way to your call to action by drawing attention and anchoring it all the way to the call to action. And so the magic triangle in action, I challenge you to go and look at some of the emails in your inbox that you genuinely like, and you'll see the same principle being applied. And you can do it in many different ways, as you see right here. Multiple offers offers. You can also add multiple magic triangles so that way you can make sure you're sustaining that single column layout while having multiple offers using multiple triangles. So as you continue to add different sections, you'll find that it's very, very easy to just continue to use that same format in the different sections as well. Tip 5 is the zigzag. This is the best tactic for using imagery. If you find yourself using imagery a lot in email, it can become extremely overwhelming for customers to read or even convert. To sustain simplicity, I encourage things like product recommendations or tables, and you can leverage this method below. So the best tactic for using imagery is actually using the zigzag method. And if you find yourself using imagery in a lot of your emails where you want to actually show them different product categories or different things about your certain product, we like to do this thing called zigzagging the columns. And that way you're able to get the user to scan the email in a way where there isn't too much text at once and there isn't too much imagery at once. And we just found that this increases our conversion rate and our click-through rate a lot more. Tip number 6 is optimize the above the fold. This is the highest converting part of an email. And like I mentioned earlier, it's the most important real estate in an email. You want to capture attention immediately with a hero image that's concise and compelling. Your goal for other emails is to get them to scroll, but with promotional emails, your goal is to get the promotional offer, why you're running the offer, and a quick body on the importance of this offer, as well as expiry dates, plus a CTA before a customer has to scroll. We found that 30% of customers actually scroll and 70% only open your email without scrolling. And so if you want to make sure that you're capturing 7 out of 10 of your customers, you want to ensure you're optimizing this part of the email as well. Here's a few examples of the above the fold optimized. It's super, super simple to apply. And when done right, it can really increase your sales and revenue per email. Now, to recap layout, you want to make it as scannable as possible. Establish a hierarchy for your typography. You want primary offers to be first. Use your email's prime real estate for your primary offer. You want single columns. So stick to a 1-column layout so you know exactly where you're driving attention and you're driving the user to take certain actions instead of having an overwhelming amount of different things that they can do. The magic triangle, use it to guide readers to click. The zigzag, lots of content, heavy layout, so use the zigzag to keep it engaging. And above the fold, optimize for the 70% of readers who will not be scrolling on your email as well. And so with that, you've completed pillar 1 of layout for high converting emails. And now I want to continue to reducing the cognitive load. So if you've ever heard of cognitive load, you know that more choice equals fewer options. Moving on to pillar 2, reducing the cognitive load. Before I get into this, I want you to think of the analogy or the concept of billionaires consistently wearing the same outfit over and over again in order to have less decision fatigue because they're making less decisions throughout the day. When you have a closet with a ton of things to wear, sometimes you don't really know what to do. And so reducing the amount of options increases the likelihood of a decision. And so more choice equals fewer conversions. I want you to consider this. It takes the average Netflix user 18 minutes to choose what movie or show to watch, and an email typically at a glance, and this is a last year study, right, is that someone only looks at it for 9 seconds. So you have 120 times less time to engage a customer with your product than Netflix has to convince someone to watch a show, and that's with zero commitment of a purchase. And so the paradox of choice makes it so much more stressful when you have multiple things going on within an email. So too much of everything can be a bad thing, and you want to keep options clear and limited so that you can facilitate your customer's decision making. Here's a quick exercise. Which email do you think has a higher likelihood to convert a customer? If you guessed B, you're right? And you can clearly see the difference. If you want to continue reducing cognitive load, you want to limit the number of offers you actually provide. Remove the extra design elements, distractions, multiple offers. You want to focus on a single offer. Ensure your headline, imagery, and copy are related to that offer, and your retention ratio to be 1-to-1 for one campaign to one offer. In some cases, if your customers don't engage with that certain promotion, your click-through rate might decrease. But what we've seen increase consistently has always been the placed order rate. 19 out of 20 times, every time we focus on one offer. Tip number 8 is make scannable copy. Make it easy to scan. Your main offer, your when it expires, and call to action should be super easy to find. And what doesn't matter is the details about your product, because customers are gonna. You want your long form informational copy to be saved for educational emails and not promotional ones. And so making sure you have all these boxes checked off, where you have your deadline to your offer, your very clear offer, as well as a compelling CTA, would make it very, very easy for customers to convert to and go to your website. Here are a few examples of great emails where you're able to see the zigzag method in place, the reverse triangle, as well as some clear ideas, headlines, supporting imagery, and just see how smooth it is when you are making emails super easy to scan and not overwhelming. Tip 9, the 60-30-10 rule. Colors matter. Colors more responsible for more than you think. If you don't have a multi-year UI and design degree and understanding the power of color, I'd just recommend leveraging the 60-30-10 rule. Now, our designers start with this as a base and then they get a little bit more complex than this, but essentially what it allows you to do is you have 60% the dominant color, the main color of your email, the foundation of the background, and the overall email, and then 30% a secondary color. So it plays a supporting role. It should complement the dominant color but not overpower it. Imagine it as a bridge between dominant and accent colors. And then 10% is your accent color. It's the pop of color that grabs attention and gets customers' eyes. And so you want to use it like a statement piece. You want to use it when you are creating focal points within your email. So that is typically used for call to actions. A great email following this rule and a great brand to follow is Athletic Brewing. You can actually see how they use their primary, secondary, and accent colors in action. Tip number 10 is 2 fonts only. Here's why, right? You can see 1 font, 2 fonts, 3 fonts, and 4. 2 fonts we found is the perfect balance of being able to have a good amount of copy that's very scannable while also keeping it engaging. 1 font works as well, but it's very difficult to limit it to 1 font. I challenge you after this video to take all your emails down from multiple fonts to only 2. And again, less is more, right? So multiple fonts confuse customers, reduce cognitive overwhelm by reducing the number of fonts you use. It sounds super simple, but I find it's one of the more difficult action items. The simpler you can keep it, the easier it is to draw attention to your focal points and offers. And 2 is the perfect example, as you can see here, where you have a contrasting header and CTA, the consistent copy in the body versus multiple and 1. Tip number 11 is simplify, then simplify again. So you want to make buying easy, right? When you're designing emails, you typically aim for simplicity over complexity. And I don't mean having nothing at all, like no imagery, but it is important to shorten sentences and simplify language. For more technical products, you want to test both, but typically long form works a little bit better with technical products. But tools I would highly recommend using before passing on any emails to your designer is actually having Grammarly or Hemingway Editor, where you can test and see how complex emails are and make sure that it's narrowed down to only what matters. And so that's it. That's all for cognitive load. All you have to do is reduce the number of choices, because the more choice, the fewer conversions you actually will have. Make the email objective extremely clear. You want to limit offers. Less offers means more conversions. Have scannable copy, so your reader should be able to know what the emails are about with a glance. Follow the 60-30-10 rule. Leverage colors to create focal points on your CTAs. Have only 2 fonts. Make your emails very easy to read, and then simplify and simplify again. Pillar 3 is having effective call to actions. Now, number 1, make sure you actually have one. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's very counterproductive to have a good design without any call to actions. So many brands do this due to aesthetic or brand guidelines when it's simply not effective. So start by having one clear call to action and define this goal with your button. Optimized CTAs are actually easier to click. Keep in mind when designing your CTAs, they might look nice being a certain size, but it might not reflect like that when emails are live. And so here's what button sizes are like with pixels on Klaviyo, but I would highly recommend you test this yourself. And for different demographics, we find different button sizes actually work better. And so for younger people or audiences that are slightly younger, you can get away with smaller call to actions. But with older audiences, we find that larger than usual call to actions actually make it very easy for them to click through. It's very easy to implement. Again, go to button sizes, and then you also want to increase the size of the button. And then to ensure that customers can very easily identify your button as well, you want to add white space, which you can do very easily within Klaviyo. Now, white space, you want to create directional cues as a email marketer, right? The more attention you want on a focal point, the more white space you actually need. Here's an example. The Mona Lisa is an entire art gallery, but it has the entire wall to itself. And Hermes Geneva, you can see there's a bunch of expensive bags on their own display case. So the more expensive the bag, more sort of isolation it gets, if that makes sense. And so leaving the appropriate amount of room between your body, text, imagery, and call to action will actually make it more likely for users to click through. And so you want to use your white space in order to captivate users to want to actually click. Tip number 14, supporting text. More support and less commitment. You want to remember the intention with your emails is to get customers not to buy instantly, but to get them back to your website in order to get a conversion. And so by using supporting text, you can actually make this goal a little bit easier, right? You want to add text above or below your call to actions to encourage clicking. And here's a few examples. With any e-commerce brand, you can just say offers expires on X date and Y time, or say while stock lasts. But for brands like apparel, you can say with 30-day hassle-free returns. Or for high ticket products, you can say plus a 1-year warranty, get yours now. And so it's very important to try to implement the more support and less commitment in order to get a customer to click through way easier. And then tip number 15, you want to differentiate CTAs by priority. If you're offering multiple things in one promotional email, make sure you differentiate your CTAs by priority. Your main offer should have the primary call to action, and then everything else should be secondary. And here's how to do so. Here's an example of great call to action prioritization. We were simply able to do this. If you take a look here, contrasting color is in the above the fold. It's at the very top of a specific email. It stands out versus all the secondary CTAs just being blended into the content. Tip number 16 is the frequency of the call to actions. Having 3 or less emails is what we found to be extremely effective. If you have an email with multiple CTAs, you're probably not conveying the message well enough. The average email contains 2.1 primary CTA buttons. What we found is 90% of the brands that have 5 or more call to actions are typically retail brands, and that's because they already have such a massive presence, so they're able to demand more attention to some of their emails. Imagine opening an email from a Nike versus from your current D2C brand. And so if your aim is to optimize for e-commerce and you don't have numerous retail stores, I would stick to 3 or below. And to recap the effective call to actions, you need to actually have a call to action, optimize the size of it, provide it some white space so that way your buttons have room and become a focal point. Add supporting text to your call to actions in order to reduce friction for your customers, and differentiate by priority so that way customers know and easily go to the offers that are actually important versus the ones that are nice to have. Make sure your frequency is not high and your CTAs are limited to 3 or less in each email. Tip number 17 is to use GIFs. GIFs work better than static images. If you use GIFs, you can grab attention, show off your product, show how it actually feels to use, simplify complex ideas, and can use it as teasers. You can help draw attention to call to actions and honestly double down on any email objective you have with the right GIF. However, they're only great when used right. So you have to consider things like the first frame, because it should be an image that you wouldn't mind it freezing on. Sometimes GIFs don't load properly and it only shows the first frame. You need to have good alternative text. GIFs absolutely need to be compressed, right? The image size should not be larger than 1 megabyte. And the GIF shouldn't be unnecessary elements. They're only effective when they are helping engaging ways to present the main idea of your email. Tip number 18 is relevant imagery. Have as much congruency with your site as possible. If you find that you're using images that don't have anything to do or have very different imagery from what your site has right now, you can expect a giant drop-off rate. You want to make your imagery congruent with your customer on-site experience so that way your image aligns with your brand guidelines, brand identity, and when they go to the website, they're not caught off guard. Have imagery that supports the message too. So when you select images, it should actually support what you're talking about. You don't want to add imagery that's not supportive to the actual message because you'll find that customers drop off. And to recap, picking the right visuals, you just want to use GIFs and the relevant images. The last thing, pillar 5, is the ESP and platform optimization. All image emails, you need to actually optimize for things like dark mode, right? This is McDonald's and you can see how horrendous this email looks. No matter how good it looks or feels when you're building it out, you also want to optimize it for how it might show up for customers. So all image emails do work. You might find that people have bashed on this concept before where they say it actually affects deliverability, but what we found is if you have the right text to image ratio and you're adding alt text, you're reducing the image sizes and reducing the number of links you have in each email, you can get away with making excellent image only emails that not only work efficiently, but also drive as much revenue with the same amount of deliverability. And the last tip here is test, test, test. You want to know what it looks like before sending. We use things like Email on Acid, Glock Apps, Litmus, and Klaviyo's built-in preview to see how it looks on different devices before we actually send the email out. And to recap platform optimization, you want to have all image emails that you also optimize for dark mode and also test, test, test. Let's say you looked at all the principles in this video and you feel like there is a lot to apply and you don't want to apply it yourself. You can actually take a call linked in the description today with our agency where we'll guide you through a lot of these email design principles. And if you want someone to do this for you, we'd be happy to. You just need to qualify, which you can figure out by booking a call below.